So you were brought up, Stephen, going back to your your early sort of life on in Leigh-on-Sea. So what was the early influences on you that led to you becoming part of the sort of church?
Yeah, I wasn't brought up in a church-going family, so in
Right.
that sense, I was kind of typical of so many people of my generation, or the post-war generations. So my parents were probably the last generation where going to church was relatively normal, and so they were part of church-going families. And then in the post-war years, I was born in 1958, so that the 50s and 60s. I don't think they ever rejected the Christian faith, but massive changes in society, with I think the impact in terms of how we thought about ourselves in relation to each other and to God, that have been impacted by the Somme, Auschwitz, Hiroshima, all those huge events of the 20th century. They just stopped going to church. I mean, I don't think they consciously rejected it, but they just stopped going. So I was baptized as a child, so I did have one visit to church in my childhood. And then my story is quite a long one, so I won't bore you with all the details. But for me, the important thing is, first of all, a belief in God. Which I've found so interesting, that children do seem to have a belief in God. And children do seem to have quite a sophisticated belief in God, because children also believe in Father Christmas and the Tooth Fairy and all the rest of it. And yet children also believe in God. And if you talk with children, which I like doing and have tried to do a lot of, they are able to distinguish these things are not the same. And it seems like it's almost hot wired. Now, I know as Christians and as Muslims, that doesn't come as a surprise to us, because we share that belief in the supremacy and the sovereignty of God, and that God is the creator and source of all. Therefore, it's not a surprise to us that human beings have a sense of God, as it were, hot wired into them. So that was definitely my experience. Even though I wasn't formed in the Christian faith, I believed in God. And then various events in my sort of early teens brought me into, as it were, the orbit of the church. And therefore, that faith, which I think was inside of me, which I didn't really know what to do with, but was there, started being shaped. And because I'm a fairly all or nothing kind of person, I find it quite hard to distinguish between starting to go to church, becoming a Christian, and sensing a vocation to ordained ministry. I'm not suggesting being ordained is the only way you can serve God as a Christian, but for me, it was a kind of all at once kind of thing. I don't mean in any kind of flashing lights way, but once I'd taken one step, I saw that somehow the one step contained within it all the other steps as well.